The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Our topic today is storytelling. Local storyteller Larry Johnson has with him 3 young students from Pillsbury School in Minneapolis, Sophia Brown, Jaden Peterson, and Tanell Fisher. These 3rd graders will delight you with the stories they've prepared. Following the children, Larry Johnson will be talking with New York storyteller Roslyn Bresnick-Perry.
Hello, I'm Larry Johnson and I'm real glad to be here. I have been telling stories for a long time. I started telling stories as a camp director in the 60s in the Twin Cities, and I've done it lots of different places, lots of different ways. But today I'm real glad to be here as the storyteller, whole language video teacher at Pillsbury School in Minneapolis. Now, we've got a great show about storytelling. I have three of the many fine storytellers from Pillsbury here, Tanell, Jaden, and Sophia. These are some of the students who are learning storytelling at Pillsbury and have been telling in a lot of different places, and they're going to tell for us. And then after they're done and we talk a little bit about storytelling, we'll talk with Roslyn Bresnick-Perry, who's a storyteller from New York. I want to hear your stories. Everybody wants to hear your stories. So, Tanell, would you tell us a story?
Hi, my name's Tanell. I'm going to tell us a story about the bear who didn't want to be himself. Once upon a time, there's 2 bears, a mama bear and a baby bear. The mama bear said, "Go play outside, baby bear," and so the baby bear did. He has all kinds of friends. And he saw a snail, and he goes, "I don't like myself. I'm icky. I'm furry. I'm going to go buy myself a snail suit." So he did. He goes, "Mom, I'm a snail." And she goes, "You cannot be a snail. Now go take that back." And he goes, "But please." "No, go take it back." So he goes, "Okay," and he took it back. Then he went outside to play again. And he goes, "I know my mom would love if I would be a fish, and she could be a fish too." So he got a fish costume, and he puts it on, and then he starts swimming in the lake. But he drowned it almost, and the mom saved him, and he goes, "Mom, can I be a fish?" She goes, "No, you almost drowned it. And do you want to drown again?" He goes, "No." So he took the costume back. And then this fairy came and said, "You only have 1 wish." And he goes, "What wish could that be?" "Any wish." He goes, A tree, that's what I like to be, a tree." And so the fairy turns him into a tree, and the fairy leaves. Then all kinds of woodpeckers and birds come and poke on him. And he goes, "No, don't do that to me. I am only a little bear. Please don't do that to me." And all the birds fly away, and the woodpeckers. And then he starts crying and crying and crying. And the fairy goes, "What's the matter? Don't you like to be a tree?" And he goes, "No, I hate it. I want to be myself. Myself. That's what I want to be." And she goes, "Well, you can be. You wanted to be this, and I cannot change you back." And he goes, "Please, please change me back." And he goes, "Well, I'll try my best." And so the fairy did. Poof! Then the bear was himself. He ran into his mother and said, "Mom, I would like to be something, and that something is myself." That's the end of the bear who didn't want to be himself.
Thank you. Good job. Tanell, I want to ask you a question right now. Where is that story from?
Well, I made it up. I think I heard it somewhere a long time ago, but I don't remember.
So you think you did?
Yeah, I think I did because I was watching a show about a bear, and then I thought about it, but I think I heard a show about a bear that didn't want to be himself.
Now, I know from watching you tell stories that you make up a lot of them and do well, so my guess is that you've probably made up a lot of that just from telling it. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Where else do you tell stories besides...
I tell at home to my sister. I told when it was my birthday at Valley Fair, and that's all I can remember of.
I know you were on the Storyline show, and maybe you'll remember more later. Jaden, you got a story to tell us? Okay.
Hi, my name is Jaden. I'm going to tell a story. It's called The Pumpkin. One day there was these three men, and there was a big fight, and it was the biggest fight of the year, and it was only in 5 weeks. So they had weapons. One had a pumpkin, one had crust, and one had whipped cream. The guy with the pumpkin said, "I'll take my pumpkin and throw it at him, and they'll be throwing it at each other." The guy with the crust said, "I'll throw my crust at them." And then the guy with the whipped cream said, "I'll take my whipped cream and throw it at the two men, and they'll be thrown at each other." So they waited that 5 weeks, and there was the biggest fight of the whole year. And then there it started, and they all threw at the same time, and splat! That's how the pumpkin pie was made. The end.
Okay. Now, where is that story from?
Well, I was thinking at night one day, and I decided to tell my parents. Then I came to your place and told you. Then this is how I got here.
Yeah, so you made that one up, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, the other one that I remember right now that you might have told on this show, or that I asked you first about the, what was that one, the bear?
Who wanted chubby cheeks?
The bear who wanted chubby cheeks. That was your own too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you do a lot of writing, a lot of making up stories?
Yeah.
And then telling them, which is great. Did a good job with that. How did you learn to tell that story? What did you do to practice it?
Well, I told my parents, and then, I just think about it at night.
Just in your head, to yourself?
Yeah.
You told it to your parents. Do you have younger brothers or sisters that you practice telling to?
Yeah, my sister. And my brother, he's only a baby. I tell to him sometimes.
You know, that's a good thing to do. I started telling to my daughter when she was only 1 month old, and people said, "Well, why do you do that? She doesn't understand it." But the people that know about these things, they say that if babies and younger children hear stories, even if they don't understand the whole story, it helps them learn how to read later on and how to be good at language. So you're doing a good thing besides practicing being good at storytelling yourself. Good job. All right. Sophia. Hi. Got a story?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you tell it to us?
Mine is the last puppy. Once there was a mama and she had 10 puppies. It was the last puppy. He was the last to drink out of the saucer, the last to drink milk, and the last to open his eyes. So one day Mama said, "Puppies for sale." And then they said, "Oh, my babies are for sale." And then a country lady came past. "Well, these are pretty puppies. Why don't I pick one?" But the last puppy, he tried to jump in her lap, but made her get in the saucer. And said, "I'll never pick you again if I remember you." Then it came a woman, and then she was kind of old, but she wanted to pick a puppy, and then the puppy tried to jump in her lap, but she made it fall, and then said, "I will never pick you again, you stupid puppy." And then a farmer came and wanted to pick a puppy, so that puppy tried to jump in his arms, and then when it jumped in his arm, it made it, but it bit his nose. And then he said, then they picked a different one. And then it was 2 more left, and then someone else came and got one, and then he said, would I be the last puppy again? So he was. And then a boy came and said, you know what? Picked up him, and then got in the car and said, you know what? You're my very first puppy, the end.
Good. All right. Where's your story from?
I don't exactly know. I didn't actually. They didn't tell where the story was from.
They didn't? Who did
The
you
book.
hear it from?
The book.
Oh.
It's a book I got at home,
Uh-huh.
and I always liked the book. I used to do it on my when we had to write sentences at school. I used to write about that. I like the book a lot.
Oh, good. Maybe we can find out exactly what it is. Is there somebody that tells stories at home? Mom or dad or somebody?
My brother, he's 6.
Does he tell stories to you? He's younger than you.
Yeah, he give me ideas.
He does? Okay, well, I can't wait till he gets into Pillsbury.
He is.
He is?
Huh?
Okay, maybe I'll see him then.
He's in 111.
111. I'll have to look for him because he hasn't told any stories there. I don't know everybody's last name, and I don't see them that often.
Yeah, but he got speech problems.
Aha, but he tells stories to you at home.
I can understand him good.
Good. That's one thing that, and you all know this, but I'll say it for the people that are watching. You're some of the many students that have felt comfortable getting up and telling in front of the class, but not everybody feels like doing that, and not everybody would feel like telling on TV. But I'm glad when I hear that people are telling at home, because that's the most important place to tell, even if you don't feel like telling in front of people or on TV or that. But hopefully some people will hear your stories out there and they'll want to tell at home too, even if they never do this. Was it hard to tell on TV?
Yeah.
Was it?
Kinda.
You did a good job, and I'm glad you came and did it. We're going to take a look here at some of the video stuff. When you get into 5th and 6th grade, the 5th and 6th graders at Pillsbury are taking more of their stories and not so much telling them like you do as learning how to translate their stories into video and make their own video. And we're going to take a look at a real quick kind of piece of animation that, let's see, it was Nang Vang, John Sverzik, and Joe Anderson in room 225 made, and they did it with the camcorder that's in the school. They made a storyboard, planned it out, and then just quick put the pieces together right in the room, kind of the way cartoons are made for TV, but they didn't take as much time as that. That's coming up right now, and then we'll talk with Roz Perry after that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That mouse just jumped out and it looks like he's standing on top of the wing. Goes, looks like he's about to dive. He didn't dive anymore. He go into the mountains, boys and girls. His parachute's gonna float him right into the water. He is in the water. Shark might get him if, oh, here comes a helicopter out of you. And looks like he just might safely make it up the rope. He's halfway up, flying safely home now. Mr. President George Bush.
And we're back with a child at heart storyteller. My friend Roslyn Bresnick-Perry, storyteller from New York City, who was at Pillsbury School yesterday and tells stories all over, right?
Right.
Yeah. Roz, I want to ask you, before we get you to tell a story, the students that we're on telling, of course, have just started telling. Can I ask you how long you've been telling stories and how you get started?
Well,
approximate, you know.
I think I've been telling stories all my life because I always had stories told to me, and I was always a good talker. So I told stories when I was little, but when I came to, I wasn't born here, I was born in Russia. And when I came here as an immigrant child, I had a great deal of problem learning English, and I was also dyslexic. of course, no one knew it then. They just thought I was lazy or something. And so I didn't do too well in school learning how to read or write my arithmetic. And one teacher, Mrs. Ethel Holstein, I still remember her, and she said to me, Roslyn, you have to talk. You have to talk and show the teachers that you're very bright, even though you find it hard to spell and read. So you learn how to talk. And that motto has served me very well. In fact, I tell stories now to dyslexic children myself, and I always tell them that bad spellers make very good talkers.
Yeah. And I was real attracted to that title when I first heard you tell me that, because I don't always know when it's happening, but I know that even though we've come a long way with helping people that are dyslexic or have various problems with that, things aren't perfect yet, but I know that many times students that surface in my classes as good storytellers are having those kinds of difficulties with reading and other things.
Yeah.
That's not always true, but
Yes.
I do know that what you're saying is true, and I've seen it over and over again.
Yes, it really works like magic. Oh, when I tell them that, they sort of put their shoulders back. There's something wonderful that they could do, and everybody likes to talk. In fact, I went to one school and told that to the children, and then I left, and then I got a call from the principal who said that the teacher said that ever since Mrs. Bresnick-Perry was there, the children have not stopped talking. So she wants me to come back, at least teach them what to say.
Yeah. Right. It's real important, too, because I think in terms of thinking about diversity, and schools are doing more and more looking at multicultural and other kinds of diversity, and it's sort of like, okay, if I'm not real good at this, I'm good at this.
Yes, we have a star inside of us.
And
we're all stars.
Find what it is.
Find what it is, yes. And I'm very glad that I was a good talker.
So am I, and I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
Now, I know that you tell stories about your experience of coming here as a Russian immigrant, but tell us tell everybody what kinds of stories do you tell?
Well, mostly I tell stories of my childhood in Eastern Europe in a little Jewish shtetl, which is a very small town that the Jewish people lived in. And I feel it almost a mission, because it's all gone now. It's all gone. And my whole family, the whole town, was annihilated during the war. Not one person left. And so I feel that I must talk about this culture. I must tell about these people, because every time I mention their names, to me, it feels like I light a candle in their memory. So, and the stories are dear stories, and they're funny, because as a child, I was always in trouble. And so children love to hear other, people tell stories, grown-ups, of when they were bad and what was done to them. And so my environment is so very different than theirs, and still I was bad. So it's they love it. And of course the adults love it, because they learn of a new something that they don't know they hadn't learned before. They learn about the life that took place between the two world wars in this part of the world, where this people and this culture does not exist anymore. So one man revolution to
one person.
One woman. Oh God, the feminists will kill me.
No, because we all knew.
Yes.
You going to tell us a story today?
Yes, I will. I will tell you a story of the day that we left for America, because people know what the immigrants felt like when they came to America, how they suffered, what happened to them. But so few people think of the terrible feelings felt by the people who left behind, to see their family, their sons, their daughters, their children go away to America. And some of them never heard from them again. It's very sad. Those people are very sad, sad people who were very funny, though. So I'm going to tell you a story that I call "And You, My Grandchild."
And I'm ready, and we're ready.
Fine. You have to picture my little town. It had not quite 3,000 people in it. And it had two main streets. The name of the town was Vysoky-Litovsk, and it was in the province of Grodno in White Russia. The town was a little town with houses sort of pushed on one another. There were no streets and no alleyways. It's sort of a haphazard maze of houses, and there were lots of synagogues. So many synagogues. A little town of not quite 3,000 people had 5 or 6 synagogues. Everybody had their own. The butchers, the tailors, the very religious people, the not so religious people, everyone had their own synagogue. And we lived right across the way from the old synagogue, because there was a new synagogue, and then there was a big synagogue. But we lived across the street from the old synagogue. That is, my grandparents did. My mother decided that she would go and live with my grandparents a week before we had to leave. Even though we had our own apartment, we had our own place to live, we went there because she felt that she would never see her people again. She felt it inside of her. And so we were with my grandparents. Now, it's early in the morning, very early in the morning, and there's a horse and wagon waiting outside the door. A big, big steamer trunk is being carried out the door. Now, my mother had a very hard time deciding what to take with her to America. So she decided that in America, they will never have underwear like hers, or a feather bed like hers, or linen like hers, or copper pots and pans. And then she took her 2 silver candlesticks. Right now, everything is very quiet, lying very quiet in the trunk, and the porter and my young uncle are carrying it into the wagon. Now, I am very excited. I'm not quite 7 years old, but I'm very excited because I'm going on this trip to America, and I'm going to see my father for the first time. Since I was 6 months old, I hadn't seen my father, and I was now almost 7. I'm so excited, running in and out, back and forth, when all of a sudden I run out and I see everyone in the family standing there crying. My 3 aunts are holding each other around, and they're crying without a stop, without an end, sort of on and on. My young uncle, he's crying, but you don't hear anything, and he wipes his eyes and his nose quietly. My mother and my grandmother are locked in each other's arms. Their individual cries of pain mingle together in one anguished wail. My grandfather, he stands to one side, away from us, and his tears roll without a sound into his honey-colored, curly beard. My grandfather was such a handsome man. Oh, I loved my grandfather. He was tall, and he had curly, reddish kind of hair. And he very seldom talked, and he even smiled less. But when I was around, he always had a twinkle in his eye and a sort of smile on his lips. I loved him so. Seeing my whole world in tears propels me into hysterical sobbing. I cry the loudest, whereas just a moment ago I was running around in complete joy. My grandmother, hearing me cry, tears herself out of my mother's arms, runs into the house, and comes out with a large slice of rye bread heaped high with chopped liver. "Now, Mamala," she says, "na esepis," which means, "Now, darling, eat something." I take the bread and the liver, and I start to eat it, and I'm not so hysterical. Of course, how hysterical can you be eating chopped liver? But I learned something. I learned something very important then. I learned something that no matter what happens, always serve food. That's a Jewish mother's answer to everything. Well, my mother has finally she tore herself out of all these loving arms, and she's sitting on the wagon waiting for me. And my grandfather picks me up, and he lifts me towards my mother when he stops in midair, and he pulls me towards him. And he whispers very quietly to me, "And you, my grandchild, will you remain a true daughter of your people?" "Of course, grandfather," I said, "of course." And I thought to myself, what a silly question that is. But I didn't know then that that question would stay with me the rest of my life. And it's because of that question that I now sit here telling you all my stories.
And I'm glad that you do.
Thank you, thank you.
I know that we don't have a lot of time left, but
Yes.
I want to just quick ask you, a lot of times people think that stories, especially that you tell to children, are the folk tales or the ones that are made up. I happen to know that the kids love these. What happens when you tell these stories to children?
Oh, when I tell these stories to children, they come alive. They absolutely come alive because they have had similar experiences. And it's not a fairy tale. And they always say to me, "Is that real? Is that a real story? Did it really happen?" And I said, "Yes, it happened to me. Yes." And when I tell stories, real stories about real life, about the immigrant life, about the hardships of being here, about things that really matter to older people, they also are very grateful. It sort of releases them. It heals them.
Yeah.
It heals them.
And I saw that happen over and over again at the school the other day.
Yes.
Good questions from the kids and
Yeah.
good answers that you gave them, and it all came from listening to the stories.
There is nothing like storytelling, darling storyteller.
I know that. You know that.
Yes.
I wish that we could spend a long time talking about the time that you told stories on the subway in New York City.
On the subway in New York City. It really was true. I did do that. And that story is one of the children's most favorite story because they could just picture it. And then I described New York City to them and the subway and the graffiti and the noise and the people, and they love it. They just love it. And everybody starts to tell me their own versions.
Of telling stories on the bus or on the subway.
Telling stories on the bus and subway.
Yeah.
And not only thing, when I finished, everybody in the subway smiled, and to have a whole row of smiling people sitting on a subway in New York is a miracle.
Right. And of course, it was an accident or a miracle that was supposed to happen, but maybe it should be institutionalized.
Yes,
telling
that's right.
stories
It
on the
would be
subway.
institutionalized, right.
Roz, thank you for being here and telling a story and talking about storytelling with us. And I hope that people out there listening to us decide they want to tell stories to somebody they care about too.
They must. You must all tell stories, all of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Larry Johnson, Roz Bresnick-Perry, and the children from Pillsbury School in Minneapolis. Thanks to all of you for joining us in All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.